A single worm stretching over 4 feet long, armed with toxins and a scent like lilies, is hiding beneath North American soil. While most people have never seen these giants or even heard that such creatures exist, scientists keep discovering new species just as bizarre and elusive. How can animals this massive remain nearly invisible, and what secrets does their biology reveal about evolution's strangest survivors? The answers start with the most astonishing measurements ever recorded. Stretched across the palm of a scientist's hand, the Oregon giant earthworm doesn't just challenge expectations, it shatters them. This native of the Willamette Valley can reach a length of 1.32 meters or over 4 feet, putting it in the same size class as a small child. Its pale, almost ghostly body can be as thick as a garden hose, yet it remains hidden deep beneath the soil, rarely surfacing except during the wettest months. For comparison, the more familiar European earthworms, so common in gardens and bait shops, rarely grow longer than 15 centimeters. Even the so-called nightcrawler, often considered large by backyard standards, looks almost delicate next to these North American giants. The Palouse earthworm, a close cousin, adds another dimension to the story. While it may not always rival the Oregon giant in sheer length, it has been documented burrowing as deep as 4.6 meters, about the height of a 2-story house. Imagine a worm, white and unassuming, tunneling through the dark, lush soils of eastern Washington, leaving behind passages that have never been seen by human eyes. These tunnels, lined with castings and organic debris, hint at the scale of the creature responsible. Not all outsized worms are native. In gardens across the eastern United States, hammerhead flatworms have begun to appear, invaders with crescent-shaped heads and bodies up to 30 centimeters long. Their striped, flexible forms glide over wet pavement after rain, unsettling those who stumble across them. While not as thick or heavy as the Oregon giant, their length alone is enough to spark disbelief. In Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Texas, reports of these flatworms stretching over a foot have become more common, leaving researchers scrambling to keep pace with their spread. For biologists, measuring these creatures is more than a curiosity. William Fender, a leading authority on the Oregon giant earthworm, has spent decades tracking down specimens, often finding only a handful in a year. His field notes describe worms so long they must be coiled several times to fit inside a standard collecting jar. In one case, a preserved specimen measured over 1.3 meters from tip to tail, a record for North America. Fender's careful documentation provides the hard numbers that separate myth from reality. The size of these worms forces a simple but unnerving question: how can animals this large remain so thoroughly hidden in familiar landscapes? Their bodies can span the width of a shovel blade, yet sightings are so rare that decades can pass between confirmed encounters. The answer lies partly in their anatomy and behavior, adaptations that allow them to slip through soil, water, and leaf litter with barely a trace. But before exploring how these giants evade detection, it is worth pausing on the numbers themselves. In a world where most worms are measured in inches, a native species that rivals a baseball bat in length and girth is not just an outlier. It is a reminder that size in the natural world is often a secret kept just below the surface. A body built for disappearance is also a body engineered for survival. The Oregon giant earthworm's pale skin is thin enough to absorb oxygen directly from the soil, but it is the worm's chemical arsenal that truly sets it apart. When disturbed, this giant releases a strong floral odor, often compared to lilies. Beneath the sweetness lies a warning: the scent is produced by specialized glands, likely evolved to deter would-be predators in the darkness below ground. The exact chemistry remains only partly understood, but field biologists have described the smell as both striking and persistent, clinging to hands and equipment long after the worm itself has vanished back into its burrow. The Palouse earthworm shares this trait, though its scent is subtler. Both species rely on more than just smell to avoid detection. Their bodies are segmented and muscular, allowing for swift, coordinated movement through dense clay or loess. Tiny bristles called setae anchor each segment, giving these worms surprising control as they push and twist through the earth. This same anatomy lets them retreat several meters in a matter of seconds, making capture almost impossible once they sense vibration or light. Feeding is a slow, methodical process. The Oregon giant earthworm consumes decaying leaves, roots, and organic debris, drawing nutrients from a diet that most animals would find indigestible. Its mouth is ringed with muscular lips and lined with mucus, which helps trap fine particles and aids in swallowing. Deep within the digestive tract, symbiotic bacteria break down cellulose and other tough plant fibers, releasing energy that fuels the worm's growth. This partnership, animal and microbe, enables the worm to reach sizes that would be impossible on muscle power alone. Predators are few, but the threat of exposure remains constant. During drought, the Palus earthworm can burrow over 4 meters deep, entering a state of dormancy until moisture returns. This ability to escape harsh surface conditions, combined with a slow metabolism and low oxygen needs, allows these giants to survive in pockets of habitat where other species would perish. Invasive hammerhead flatworms, by contrast, take a more aggressive approach. Their bodies are flat and flexible, designed for gliding over wet surfaces and squeezing into the narrowest cracks. Unlike the earthworms, hammerheads are hunters. They track prey, often smaller earthworms, using chemical cues in the soil. Once within striking distance, the hammerhead extends its muscular pharynx and secretes a potent neurotoxin. This toxin immobilizes prey within seconds, allowing the flatworm to consume its victim at leisure. Reports from gardens across the eastern United States describe the unsettling sight of a hammerhead coiled around a paralyzed nightcrawler, its head pressed flat against the struggling worm. The combination of size, chemical defenses, and specialized feeding has allowed these worms, native and invasive alike, to carve out ecological roles that few other animals can match. Their survival depends not just on hiding, but on harnessing every advantage their anatomy and chemistry provide. It is a strategy that has kept them thriving out of sight in habitats that are themselves just as hidden as the creatures they support. Across the Palus and Willamette Valley, the last strongholds of giant earthworms are measured not in miles, but in scattered acres. Less than 1% of North America's native grasslands remain, a statistic almost impossible to grasp until you stand in one of these remnants, a patch of bunchgrass prairie hemmed in by wheat fields, or a sliver of oak savanna squeezed between roads and subdivisions. Here, the soil is unlike anything found in a suburban yard. Loess, a fine, wind-blown silt, piles up in rolling hills across eastern Washington and northern Idaho. These deposits, sometimes several meters thick, create a soft, nutrient-rich layer that holds moisture through the summer and insulates life through the winter. In the Willamette Valley, the ground is heavier, a dense clay-rich earth that turns slick in the rains and cracks open in the heat. Both landscapes once stretched unbroken for thousands of square miles. Today they survive in fragments, each one a living archive of what has been lost. For the earthworms that depend on these soils, the consequences are immediate and severe. Drylolaris mayselfrashi, the Oregon giant earthworm, is now confirmed from only 16 sites, 15 in the Willamette Valley and 1 in the Coast Range. The Palus earthworm, Drylolaris americanus, is even more elusive, its presence tied to the last undisturbed bunchgrass prairies. These habitats are not only rare but shrinking. Conversion to agriculture, urban expansion, and decades of invasive species have erased nearly all of the original grassland. What remains is often separated by miles of plowed fields and highways, isolating populations that once moved freely through a vast connected underground. A regional ecologist who has spent years surveying these remnants describes the situation in stark terms. We are not just losing species, we are losing entire worlds beneath our feet. Each patch of native prairie is a stronghold for creatures that cannot survive anywhere else. The numbers back this up. In the Willamette Valley, less than 1% of the original prairie persists. In the Palus, native grassland is so scarce that some counties have none at all. The soil itself is a record of this loss, layers of ash from ancient volcanoes mixed with the remains of plants and animals, now covered by a thin veneer of crops or asphalt. This fragmentation makes scientific study nearly impossible. Finding a giant earthworm in these conditions is like searching for a single thread in a tapestry that has been torn apart. Many sites are inaccessible, privately owned, or so altered that native soil structure is gone. Even where habitat survives, the worms may be present in numbers too low for reliable detection. The lack of data is not just a scientific inconvenience, it is a symptom of how close these species are to disappearing entirely. With every plowed field and paved road, another piece of their world vanishes often before biologists even know it was there. The rarity of these habitats explains why so little is known about the worms themselves. Most of what scientists understand comes from the handful of places where native soil remains undisturbed. Here, the loess and clay serve as both home and hiding place, preserving a fragile lineage that predates European settlement by thousands of years. But as these last refuges shrink, the odds of discovering new populations or even confirming the continued existence of known ones grow slimmer by the year. Beneath the surface of the Palouse and Willamette soils, the giants vanish with a precision that borders on the uncanny. Their disappearance is not an accident of chance, but the outcome of finely tuned survival strategies. The Oregon giant earthworm and its relatives spend most of their lives deep underground, often beyond the reach of even the deepest plow. In the Palouse, burrows can extend down over 4 meters, far below the zone disturbed by agriculture or casual digging. These depths are not just a refuge from predators or drought, but a deliberate escape from the reach of human activity. When the soil dries or temperatures swing, the worms enter a state known as deep estivation. Their bodies slow to a near standstill, metabolism dropping to the bare minimum required for survival. In this dormant state, they can persist for months, sometimes longer, sealed away in chambers lined with mucus and compacted earth. Surface activity becomes rare, tied almost exclusively to the wettest weeks of the year, when conditions are just right for feeding or reproduction. Outside of these brief windows, the worms are effectively invisible, hidden not just by soil but by the rhythms of their own biology. Even in landscapes shaped by centuries of farming, these giants remain elusive. Modern plowing rarely exceeds a depth of 30 centimeters, while the worms' burrows plunge 10 times deeper. Agricultural disturbance acts like a moving ceiling. Above, the earth is churned and lifeless. Below, a silent world endures, untouched and largely unexplored. This vertical separation means that even in fields plowed every season, a pocket of ancient life can persist, waiting for the rare moment when conditions above ground align with the needs of the worms below. For researchers, this presents a unique problem. Standard soil sampling methods designed for common earthworms miss anything living more than 1 meter down. Deep coring is expensive, slow, and often yields nothing but empty tunnels. The result is a scientific blind spot, an entire layer of biodiversity that slips through the cracks of conventional study. The effect on public awareness is profound. Most people, even those living atop historic worm habitat, have never seen a native giant earthworm. Reports are so rare that each confirmed specimen makes news among biologists. The creature's own adaptations, deep burrowing, long periods of dormancy, and a near total absence from the surface, combine with the fragmented state of their habitat to render them almost mythical. Unlike more conspicuous animals, these worms leave no tracks, no calls, and no visible nests. Their presence is betrayed only by the occasional castings at a burrow entrance or, on rare occasions, by a pale body unearthed by chance. A regional ecologist who has spent years surveying the Palouse describes the challenge with a kind of quiet frustration. You can walk a field for days and never find a trace. The only evidence is the soil itself, undisturbed, holding secrets we are just beginning to guess at. This invisibility is not just a quirk of behavior, but a fundamental obstacle for science. Without reliable ways to find and identify these giants, even basic questions about their abundance and distribution remain unanswered. The need for clear taxonomic tools grows more urgent as habitats shrink and sightings dwindle. For now, the giants remain hidden not only from the public eye, but from the very researchers trying to document their existence. More than 50 species of large earthworms native to North America remain without formal scientific names. In field collections and museum drawers, specimens accumulate under vague labels, sometimes as giant white worm, sometimes misfiled with European invaders or common garden species. The confusion runs deeper than a missing label. Immature Oregon giants are nearly indistinguishable from several smaller, pale-bodied relatives until dissected, and even seasoned biologists have misidentified juveniles as different species entirely. The result is a taxonomic backlog that leaves critical questions unanswered. Population estimates for these giants are little more than educated guesses. No one can say with confidence how many Oregon giant earthworms survive in a given patch of valley clay, or whether the Palus earthworm persists in some overlooked fragment of prairie. The absence of reliable identification keys means that field surveys often return ambiguous results. A white worm pulled from a soil core might be a rare native, a common exotic, or one of dozens of undescribed species, each possibility carrying a different weight for conservation and research. This uncertainty has real consequences. Without clear names and diagnostic features, it becomes nearly impossible to track declines, map ranges, or prioritize habitats for protection. The backlog of unnamed species represents not just a paperwork problem, but a fundamental barrier to understanding the true diversity and vulnerability of North America's largest worms. As the clock ticks on their shrinking habitats, the scientific blind spot only widens, leaving entire lineages at risk of vanishing before they are even recognized. Inside the Smithsonian's labyrinth of specimen jars, the search for answers has shifted from field to lab. Anna J. Phillips, a molecular systematist, holds a vial containing what looks like a faded ribbon an earthworm collected decades ago. For years, attempts to extract DNA from such old preserved specimens failed. Traditional barcoding methods demanded intact genetic material, but most museum worms had been fixed in chemicals that shredded their DNA into fragments. The breakthrough came with mini barcode technology, short genetic sequences just 150 base pairs long that could be recovered even from degraded tissue. These fragments were enough to confirm species identity and trace evolutionary relationships. When Phillips and her team applied these tools to North America's giant worms, the results were startling. Genetic data revealed that the lineage containing the Oregon giant and Palus earthworms diverged from their closest relatives more than 150 million years ago, back when dinosaurs still roamed the continent. This deep evolutionary split means the giants are not just oddities, they represent an ancient branch of life, isolated for eons beneath the surface. Yet every answer led to new puzzles. Mini barcodes worked on some specimens but failed on others, leaving gaps in the family tree. Even more surprising were the genes linked to anticoagulants, molecules that in leeches prevent blood from clotting. Early sequencing hints that North America's giant worms possess unique versions of these genes, unlike anything seen in European earthworms or even well-studied leech species. Whether these molecules serve a defensive purpose or play a role in the worm's subterranean lifestyle remains unknown. Phillips describes the work as equal parts sleuthing and frustration. Each genetic success opens another door, but the rooms beyond are often empty or filled with clues that do not quite fit. The more scientists learn, the more the giants slip away into the shadows of evolutionary time. For now, the mystery has only deepened. These creatures are not just rare, they are relics, carrying secrets written in code that modern science is only beginning to read. Today, giant aquatic worms remain among North America's least understood creatures, rare, hidden, yet real. As habitat loss accelerates and climate shifts alter waterways, each undiscovered species risks vanishing before science can even name it. Our understanding of these giants is not just about curiosity, it is a measure of how much mystery we are willing to let slip away. The unknown still stirs beneath our feet. What else might we be missing?